Hi, Crime Junkie jury. I'm Lauren Conlin, and here is your daily Diddy Digest. We are on day 16 of the United States versus Sean Combs. And this morning, before the first witness was brought in by the government, they wanted to enter some exhibits into evidence that didn't have any witness testimony attached to it. We didn't really have any context, actually, as to really what was going on. But this evidence, it was text messages that were found in a cell phone that was seized during the Star Island search in March of 2024. And that is Diddy's Miami property. So these text messages were between Diddy and one of his security guys, D-Rock. And Diddy wrote, and again, this is not exact, I was taking notes, but something along the lines of, act like I am not effing with her. He said the real F word. And then he said, how is her eye? And then D-Rock wrote, I told everyone a fight broke out in the club. She ain't telling nobody. And then he said, I'm going to call you. And then that was pretty much it. And then the government brought in their first witness, who was Frank Piazza. He works at Legal and Audio Video. He's an expert video commentator. He does forensic video analysis, basically. And he was very buttoned up in a suit. He was qualified as an expert. He said he's done between 50 and 100 cases for the Southern District of New York, but that wouldn't be an issue because 75% of the cases that he works on are for the defense. He gets about $295 an hour, and he was here to analyze the InterContinental 2016 infamous and tragic beating video of Cassie Ventura. So he talked about, and again, this was really tough testimony to follow. I won't lie. I think a lot of us were like, okay, we're really trying to follow this. Let me enter some of these notes in a chat GPT and figure out what the hell he is saying. But essentially, the video footage that we have been seeing in the courtroom and also in the public, half of it is from surveillance cameras that were on the ceiling, kind of in the corners, and the other half was from a cell phone. Now, in the testimony of Israel Flores, he was the first witness to testify in this case, the man from Securitas, who Diddy allegedly offered money to and he turned it down. He testified that he took a cell phone video for his wife. You know, he was like, oh, she'll never believe me. So he took this video. And actually, it's interesting because, you know, with Eddie Garcia's testimony, he confirmed, I guess, you know, through his testimony, through his boss, because Diddy had asked, is this video or this footage anywhere else? Has it been wiped from the cloud, you know, whatever? And his boss testified that it wasn't anywhere else and it was wiped from the cloud. So during the cross-examination of Frank Piazza, Tenny Garagos, one of Diddy's attorneys, she actually said, well, where did the surveillance footage come from? And I'm like, ooh, yeah, let's hear it. And he said, from the government. And she's like, do you know where the government got it? And he's like, no, I don't. So I was like, rats. But anyway, the purpose of his testimony was to show that, yes, this was kind of spliced together chronologically. There are certain reasons why you might see different timestamps at certain points, but he explained that there was motion censored, so they didn't record everything at all times, and also there were different angles. So we saw the angle of the elevator and the kind of lobby area near the elevator, and then we saw another angle from the hallway where their room was. So essentially, the government wanted to point out that some of the jumping that we saw, this was just because of, the system was old. We saw pixelation, and that tends to happen, during some of these, during some of these surveillance videos. And if you see that there are, there's supposed to be 30 frames in a second, but we're seeing 22, there's a reason for that. And it's due to certain points of extraction. But what Frank Piazza did is he went through and he manually ensured that, the frames were correct when we were all viewing this video. He said that, yeah, there's a reason that sometimes the footage overlaps because of, this camera over here. And then this camera is kind of jumping in to the next motion or move. he also, he was told by the government to sort of go through what was happening in the video. That was their way of saying, okay, what's happening now? And he would say, well, the male is dragging the female. The male is now kicking the female. And I have to say, I mean, there was one guy on the jury that seemed kind of pained to be continually watching this video, but I have to even check my face sometimes. When I have to keep watching this video over and over, excuse me, I I'm just like this, and I'm like, oh, stop, stop, stop. I have to catch myself. So it was kind of amazing to see not very many jurors react to watching this for pretty much the 300th time. Um, he Let me see. I'm just making sure I didn't forget anything. Yeah, I mean, he also said that there were certain times where I guess footage was quote unquote missing. And this was because there was certain seconds missing for various reasons that I just discussed. It would jump because of emotion, or, the other camera in the hallway, it was moving to that. What he did was he put black screens in place here. So it would give like a time lapse, I guess. And it wouldn't seem like everything was just one after another when that wasn't necessarily the case. And, he talked about what was happening in the mirror area when Diddy kind of sat down in the chair before he threw the vase. They talked about how he came back and he grabbed his cell phone. They kind of zoomed in on that. And overall, they just said that this is actually during redirect. I thought it was a good end to, his testimony. They said that, okay, the redirect said, okay, so, and I'll get to what Tenny Garagos was kind of talking about, but it was a lot about timestamps. And they said, okay, cool. Timestamps aside, does this video, the way it is now, reliably depict what happened pretty accurately? And he said, yes. So then going back to Tenny Garagos, her cross-examination, it was focused a lot on timestamps because we would see a lot of skipping for various reasons. And he explained that a lot of it was like the motion sensor. So if somebody was in the hallway and they weren't moving for a while and then they had some kind of abrupt movement, yeah, maybe it would skip. So for an example that we saw was, Diddy was holding Cassie's bag at one point, and the next frame, it was already on the ground. So it kind of skipped through him dropping the bag on the ground or whatever. And that was like 3 seconds that we were missing. So Tenny was just pointing out that, okay, we're missing a lot of seconds here. We're missing a lot of seconds here. So if you added those in, it wouldn't necessarily be like, I don't know, he was gunning down the hallway and this all happened so fast type of thing. I think that's what she was trying to point out. She also made sure to point out a moment where the security guard, who was Flores, as we knew, he was having a moment with Diddy where he appeared to be laughing or smiling. And I think that was her way of trying to kind of slide that in to sort of minimize the incident, the beating, because she's like, oh, and that's the security guard smiling, right? And he's like, yes. Let me see. Yeah, so she pointed out that, during one section when he was talking about what was going on in the mirror, she said, okay, well, there's almost like a ghost-like figure in the surveillance video, and you could kind of see it, but in the cell phone video, there was no ghost-like figure, kind of saying, okay, well, this video footage might not be as great as we all think it is. She kind of got him to say that he told the government he thought the surveillance system that the InterContinental used wasn't so great. It was a little outdated. Yeah, and that was pretty much it. And again, I was like, whew, I'm glad that's over, because that was a bit hard to follow. But then we got to the second and last witness of the day, Brianna Bongelin, who is a friend of Cassie's. She's a graphic designer, and she met Cassie while working at 2 different fashion companies, Young and Reckless, and I will find it. It was something Diamond. This is going to bother me. Diamond Supply Co. Okay. So at Diamond Supply Co., she was kind of partnering with Cassie on doing this t-shirt line type of thing. And they got close. And she testified that they did a lot of drugs together. And the government seemed to really want to get ahead of this, because we've heard a lot about Brianna, also called Bana at certain times. But that Bana and Cassie did pretty much every drug under the sun, that they were both addicted and it got worse over time. Brianna testified that she also sold Cassie drugs. She at one point sold drugs to Diddy. I think it was just cocaine. And then she testified that she also got drugs from Diddy as well. And this was actually the first time that we had heard GHB mentioned. And she said that Diddy gave her G once and she tried it. And she described that it made her, it was kind of like alcohol and it made her horny, she said. Can I say that? So she also briefly discussed at the beginning of her testimony, then we kind of got into it in the middle, did you ever have any violent episodes with Mr. Combs? Yes, he dangled me over a 17-story balcony and then threw me into patio furniture. So before I get into that testimony, she also testified about a time in 2016 that she and Cassie went shopping, got their nails done, were kind of running around doing some things, and Diddy texted Cassie and kind of laid out every place they had been to that day. And Brianna said she was like, whoa, that's kind of creepy that he knows all that. She also testified that during a time in 2016, they were doing some kind of photo shoot with a friend, she and Cassie, outside of Diddy's Malibu house, and that Diddy got up in her face and threatened her and said something like, I'm the devil and I could kill you. And she describes it as being a really random and terrifying moment, but also said that she was on drugs. So, it was extra terrifying for her. And let me see what else. She said, her and Cassie tried to get sober at one point. It was very difficult. They would try to cook to get sober, but they would kind of fall back into drugs because so many of their friends were doing drugs. And, she was asked about when the last time she saw Cassie and Diddy was, and she said January 2nd, 2018. And she knew this date. And the government said, why do you know this date so well? And she said, well, I have it tattooed on my body because that's when I decided to also get sober. And this was because of New Year's Eve, January of 2018. She testified that she and Diddy and Cassie were in Miami at the one hotel and they did K for 8 hours. And she was like, okay, no more. She also, they got her talking about her lawsuit because she did make a $10 million demand against Diddy about the balcony dangling incident, which I am saving for last pretty much. But she talked about hiring one lawyer and then she let this lawyer go because they got so many things wrong on her demand. She hired another lawyer who made this demand, and also certain things were incorrect. And this was brought up during cross-examination as well. And then she talked about the fact that she was contacted by Cassie before Cassie's lawsuit in 2023 dropped because Cassie asked her, can I use your name in my lawsuit, about the balcony? And she said no. But during cross, Nicole Westmoreland, one of Diddy's attorneys who actually cross-examined Don Richard last, she kind of was like, so you guys were talking about this lawsuit. You were figuring out dates, places, who was there, what happened, did Cassie see it? Because you told her she saw it per a government interview or transcript. And in Cassie's lawsuit, Cassie got a lot of it wrong. She said that Brianna was at a hotel. She said her friend Tiffany was there for it. She wasn't. And so that did come out during cross. But let me see. Oh yeah. And then it came out, the government wanted Brianna to just say, yes, I still talk to Cassie. I still talk to Deontay Nash, and I've spoken to them throughout this trial, although not about their testimony. And she actually said both Cassie and Deontay texted her today, but she did not respond. Now, the balcony dangling incident, which allegedly happened in, I believe it was 2016. Yes, it was. She describes sleeping at Cassie's house with her ex-girlfriend. She's woken up by some banging on the door. She kind of was like, what the hell? She kind of shuffles her ex-girlfriend into another room, and she goes out on the balcony to either smoke a cigarette or light up a joint. And Diddy kind of bum rushes her, picks her up underneath the armpits, and dangles her over this balcony, like head first, where her legs are kind of kicking up. And he says, you know what the F you did. You know what the F you did. And by the way, she said to this day, she still doesn't know what the F she did. And she was asked, how long did he dangle you over the balcony for? And she said, he repeated, you know what the F you did, maybe 2 or 3 times. So 15 seconds. before throwing her against the patio furniture or balcony furniture. And then she described that Cassie came out of her room and said, like, in disbelief, like, did he just throw you over the balcony? So it is questionable. Did Cassie see it? Did she not? We've heard a couple different things about this. But she says she went home and she felt so uncomfortable. She was shaking. She felt gross. So she showered, and she describes calling her manager or her boss and saying, you know, I don't know what to do. This happened. And he said, because she was scared, and he said, go to a chiropractor. So she goes to the chiropractor, and apparently the chiropractor asked her, who did this to you? And she did not answer. But we saw a photo of her with a neck brace and bandages all over her back from behind that her ex-girlfriend took. And then we saw a photo of her bruise that she took on the back of her leg. And it was a very bad bruise with almost a puncture hole in the center of it. And I will tell you, the jury did react to that. There was one man, the same man who reacts to the beating video. He was like he made a face. So there were some reactions to that. She said that Diddy did try to contact her 2 or 3 days after via FaceTime. And she was like, I just want to be cool. And she said he didn't say much. He kind of just had his hands like on his head like this a little bit. And that was pretty much it. The government wanted to get ahead of her lawsuits and some of the conflicting testimony. And then Nicole Westmoreland started her cross, which is going to be finished tomorrow. And Nicole Westmoreland, aggressive, did not take the gentle aspect at all. But she pretty much brought up the drug use a lot between Brianna and Cassie, really honed in on how many drugs they did, the amount of drugs they did. And it was tedious because Brianna was taking her time to answer. I'm not going to say she was being uncooperative, but she definitely was like, well, I didn't take K that many times. And then Westmoreland would say, well, I'm not asking you how many times you took it. I'm asking you if you took it with Cassie, type of thing. So again, she brought up the discrepancies between the balcony stories and the lawsuits, and the fact that, you know, her own lawsuit at one point, I think actually the most recent one, her lawyer said, well, you know, your lawyer said, she said, your lawyer said when he was dangling you over the balcony, he said, I could kill you. I could kill you. And that's not what happened. That's actually what happened in 2016 at his Malibu house. And she said, yeah, well, my lawyers wrote it. And it also came up that, you know, I guess she told the government at one point there was a party during the balcony dangling and it happened then. And she said, you know, that's not true, or I don't remember. There was a lot of I don't remembers. And at one point she had Westmoreland had Brianna describe how each drug felt when she took it, which I thought was really just kind of hammering into the fact that this young woman was once very addicted to drugs. So how can you believe her, type of thing? And yeah, we talked about how she still spoke to Deontay. She still spoke to Cassie. There was a point when Nicole Westmoreland point blank asked, you know, are you lying about this? Did you lie about this? Objection, objection. And yeah, I mean, I think, she also said that her lawyers, Nicole Westmoreland said her lawyers they said that Diddy groped her when he was lifting her up, indicating sexual assault. And so they're like, did you kind of like say that he sexually assaulted you? And she's like, no, my lawyer said it this way. So yeah, there was just a lot of back and forth. And there's about 30 minutes of cross left, but that is pretty much it for today. So I will be back tomorrow with another update, another daily Diddy digest. So thanks for watching.